through various projects, various challenges, 75 projects, 75 initiatives are awesome initiatives. I think time has come where the convergence needs to happen. That means folks who have served this nation as a part of defense forces should basically either become entrepreneurs or they should basically become part or engage in the boards of these startups, because it will take a long time for entrepreneurs to understand how actual dual usage really happens. And the vice versa, entrepreneurs who are totally technologists, they really need to understand the geopolitics and how geopolitics can lead to dual usage and hence profitability. So these are the two things which I wanted to share over here, and with the message that next 12 years are going to be for dual usage profitability, dictated and decided by geopolitics as a strategy pillar. Thank you.
Thanks, Ravi. You are always all powerful in your convictions. May I now request Air Chief Marshal R.K.S. Badoria, PVSM, AVSM, VM, ADC, former Air Chief, to kindly give your comments.
Dr. Saraswat, General Bhatt, Ravinder, General Kandare, Vice Chief of Navy, Admiral Korponde, all the dignitaries here, all the Defense Services officers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Disruption at the global scale is a great idea. And if you ask me, is it possible? Can we be the leaders? Can we become and lead in this? I think this is one of the areas that we can. The technological roadmap, what the services aspire, the technological growth, the Defense Space Agency issues has been covered by the Defense Secretary. And I couldn't agree more on the dual usage part emphasized by Ravinder and entrepreneurial issues. I will quickly touch upon my sense of what we need to do if we have to disrupt. And I think in order to really look at this huge task, huge ask from the industry and as a nation, if we have to disrupt at the global level, it will boil down to time and cost. It has to be fast. We really need to move in every aspect where there is space to develop technologies fast and move, and it has to be low cost. And from that aspect, I think we need to take some drastic steps from the way we work and the way we plan to execute this. The space reforms was a great new initiative that has laid the foundation for the private sector to come up, the huge technological growth that is coming up. The Defense Space Initiatives is a great first step under IDEX. I think it will yield dividends. I think the challenge now is to start looking beyond and see how are we going to involve the defense services, the space agency, to actively translate this into work on ground in terms of time. We already know what is required today. We need 24/7 visibility of all our borders, of all our areas of interest. We need, ISR in terms of multispectral, in terms of fusing information, in terms of fusing not only space, but every airborne platform or any platform looking at any target to be able to merge everything. We need to get into, machine learning and AI. Very, very vast topic, vastly misunderstood. If we have to really achieve it, we really need to start working, especially on the machine learning part, because there is a huge learning process. It needs to get in immediately. Communications network, which DefSec referred to, is a huge requirement today. Navigation, communication network. So I think we need to go beyond the way we work in terms of this Defense Space Agency and the services to start action on this in terms of joint project. Only IDEX won't do. Start the joint projects to to start achieving results in the areas that are required today. We need many LEO satellites today. So those orders can go, those letters of intents can go, the joint action can start, budget needs to go, because there are very few people with knowledge and guts like Ravinder and some of the venture capitalists who are really putting funding into the space sector. Very few. Even our big industrial players are not really coming into this. When they see the defense services actively coming in, and I'm focusing on the defense part, it will have its parallel usage on the civil part for sure, and it will grow. But when this ecosystem starts, the civilian side, the industry side will follow suit. But somebody is going to start putting money and start working on the real issues in terms of ISR, communication, network. It is applicable today. The next technological growth is something that we need to focus. I talked about machine learning and AI. It needs to come in a big way. And also in terms of how we are going to utilize the growth that is happening, be it in quantum field or be it in neuroscience field, into the relevant applications in space and cyber. And cyber in particular, that needs to be merged, because ultimately security is what matters today. We need to start going beyond everything. We have become GPS dependent. Everything. If we have to, some people must have used GPS even to come to this hall, because that's how advanced we become. But on the military side, we need to straight away start talking of GPS denial environment, because it would be denied. We have to have our own NAVIC. Even with that, we have to get to security issues. So cyber needs to take a huge part, and this technological growth is possible only when we start really having joint projects with the startups in industry. I've been fortunate that I've interacted a lot with the industry as part of ISPA initiatives in terms of conferences, and as part of my own interaction with the industry, aerospace and defense and space of late. And let me tell you, on the space side, the growth is so huge, and the expectations of the startups are rising so fast, that I've started to worry whether we can really meet it as defense in particular, and overall as an ecosystem. And for that, if we have to really cause disruption, we need to meet it. On the industry side, I think this realization needs to come that there's so much similar development happening in so many areas, that there has to be some convergence, some dialogue, lateral instead of lateral competition, and have a more refined approach even on the industry side, between startups, within startups, and with the entire ecosystem that is emerging. And that is where I think ISPA, the initiatives that are being done, it will yield results. The ISRO ecosystem that already exists, where private sector play a huge part, I think needs to quickly support this. There is a lot of good work happening there, and which can be further multiplied. A lot of hand-holding is required, and a lot of aspirations of the startup that exist today will materialize only if this hand-holding in terms of access to labs, particularly low cost, and access to certification happens fast. We have to achieve disruption. We should be launching about 100 satellites in the next 1 year. If we achieve that, I'm talking of all multiples, all LEO, GEOs, your networks, and your communication related, and get onto entire kind of ISR. You want to do disruption, let us all move towards achieving it. Whether it is possible, I think it's hugely possible. And with ISPA's feedback to the government, I'm sure the government is willing to take bold steps and disruptive steps to make it happen. I do look forward to the day that it happens. And from our side, of course, we will be fully in support. Thank you very much. In the short time, I thought I'll just share my views in short, and we can discuss further wherever whoever would like to interact. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for those inspiring words. May I please request our chief guest, Dr. V.K. Saraswat, member SNT, Niti Aayog, Government of India, and Chancellor, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and former Chairman, DRDO, to kindly give his address.
Very Very good afternoon, Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria, Mr. Singh, General Kandare, and all the esteemed dignitaries for this conference. When I was contacted for this particular conference, I thought it will be kind of a discussion which will be going into details of what is required as far as the defense for space, space for defense and defense of space are concerned. So I had slightly worked a little bit, but I'll try to compress my thoughts as much as possible. India has launched a space defense mission. I think all of you are aware of that. A military space program for developing innovative solutions for the country's defense forces through industry and startups. That is the overall theme. And our Honorable Prime Minister has already said that space technology is an example of what security will mean for any strong nation in the future. Mission space defense will not only strengthen the forces but also provide new and innovative solutions. Air Chief Marshal mentioned about Mr. Singh mentioned about 75 challenges, and in the space sector, particularly for the private firms to work on based on defense requirements in the spectrum domain. And 5 technology buckets have been also identified. Those of you who are working in this area are aware of that. Launch systems, satellites, communications, payload, ground systems, and software. The space mission will provide a boost to the space-based tech with multiple civilian and military applications. In the military domain, as Air Chief was mentioning, the doctrinal imperative of gaining higher ground to gain tactical advantage has also manifested in us seeking capabilities in air and now in space. So utilization of space-based assets has revolutionized warfare by enhancing the capacities in intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, communications, early warning, weather forecasting, navigation, and so on. In the absence of an independent military space program, the military has relied on the civilian space program pursued by the Indian Research Organization. The armed services are exploiting the capabilities of ISRO, and they are using presently the Cartosat, the reset for imagery and so on. Future programs are expected to increase accuracy, reduce revisit time, increase capacity to download data of remote sensing satellites with multiple sensors on board. Looking ahead, we need to push the envelope towards indigenous launch on demand capability. Only 3 days back we saw the SSLV-D2, which is supposed to carry out this particular, and a successful launch has demonstrated our quick access to space. Satellite navigation services are an integral component for the armed forces. These are used by all platforms like GPS, constellations, IRNS, growing fast. And we are looking for better accuracies, better than 10-meter accuracy, and which includes entire complement satellites, ground stations, and receivers. Satellite-based electronic intelligence ELINT has emerged as a critical element of intelligence gathering, especially with regards to identifying and locating enemy radar systems. Indian ELINT has requisite expertise to develop satellite-based ELINT payloads, and the same needs to be accelerated. As reliance on space grows, space-based assets will become centers of gravity and are likely to be targeted in war and less than war situations. This is leading to evaluation of concepts of force projection, protection, and targeting in space. Anti-satellite tests by major nations are an indication of the onset of this contestation and militarization of outer space. While our Mission Shakti operation in 2019 highlighted our anti-satellite weapon capability to deter adversaries from resorting to escalatory space conflict, it also brought to the fore the need for comprehensive space situational awareness through a robust space surveillance network. The key areas of the armed forces are the development of the missile defense radars for SSA, space-based sensors, and optical telescopes to track adversaries' objects. The existing capabilities of ISRO and DRDO will thus need to be augmented in the air surveillance picture of the IAF well beyond the present 100-kilometer altitude. The integration will provide a gradual progression of space situational awareness, and collaboration with other countries for sharing of information would also be essential for enhancing our SSA capabilities. IAF strategy to fully integrate air and space capabilities to have a common picture of aerospace medium, reduce the sensor to shoot at time, and enable optimum force application. Raksha Mantri recently said in a talk that IAF does need to transcend an aerospace force in the years to come, and we are working on such vision. As a space version of Heartland theory put forth by US Maxwell Air Force Base states, one who controls the Earth orbits controls near-Earth space. One who controls near-Earth space controls the Earth, and who dominates the Earth is the custodian of humankind. So I would say that the space domain has many stakeholders in our context. We have government and private research institutions, we have private industries, SMEs, MSMEs, startups, and we have defense. All of them are linked through three things. One is academia, industry cooperation, private industry and defense, they are related with policy initiatives, and of course, government schemes which are also working through the government collaboration. So there are two elements, space for defense, which includes various uses of space capabilities for military operations and missile defense, early warning. Strategic intent is to enhance the military operations. Enabling requirements are integrating space across defense domains and enhance non-kinetic capability of the space systems. Defense of space, I mentioned already, accounts for the prevention of potential threats to the space assets. Several other capabilities of military space have become possible, like space will become indispensable for military operations, launch costs per kilogram are decreasing rapidly, and commercial uses of space and our increasing dependency thereupon have led to companies in the Western field like SpaceX, OneWeb, and Blue Origin. We need to go and occupy more and more space in the LEO. There's going to be a serious problem because everybody is now going to occupy 400 to 1,000 kilometer orbit, and that will become a crowded space. So as a consequence, the previous space situational awareness, space traffic management will become increasing importance. Proposed focus areas of integrating space and defense, and then I will stop. Framework to integrate space and defense has got three elements: policy level, capability and funding level, and user level. If you look at capability and funding level, one has to look for introducing space cooperative projects under Ministry of Defense. Introducing space capability projects and programs where DSA capability gaps are identified. Enabling close collaborations among DAS, DSRO, ISRO, and so on. Providing capital and participatory incentives to private sector. On the policy level, we need to create an integrated national space strategy for civil and defense. Creating a defense space strategy supporting the national space strategy. Renewing ISR, SATCOM policies and all other relevant space policies. Renewing defense procurement guidelines to include private sector participation. And the user level, we have to integrate the space domain into the operational plans. Enabling the capacity building and training across the tri-services on utilizing spatial data. Building coherence between tri-services on effective integration of space systems, and exploring integration of SATCOM with battle communication plans. So our shared vision to create a national space strategy should be, a strategic plan should be recognizing space and strategic domain as a national security priority, developing a national space strategy, establishing a dedicated space command which will take care of space of defense and defense of space, and also look for a space station for both civil and military research applications. There are clearly defined, identified areas where we have to work to make sure that private parties start working with DRDO, ISRO, and all other national research organizations to pitch in with the latest technology, using the disruptive technologies what were identified by our Air Chief, to give us the smartest system that will solve the problems and enhance our military capabilities in the fourth dimension of space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was, again, a very insightful speech. I hope the ecosystem is able to take guidance from what you said. May I now request all of you to rise for release of the Space Technology Park document. Sirs, it's lying on your table, sir. May I request DG ISPA, Lieutenant General Khandare, sir, Vice Admiral Ghormade, sir, to please come on the stage. May I also request Dr. Ranjana Dr. Vinod from ISRO, and Dr. Sudhir sir to come on the stage. May I also request representative of DSA, Commodore K.H. Singh, to kindly come on the stage. The space technology parks post the declaration by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Modi on 2020 for the privatization of the Indian space sector. There has been a major hike in the growth of the space industry. One of the current government's top priorities is to make India Atmanirbhar in space. The establishment of space technology parks could be an important foundational step in this direction. Space technology parks are designed to take on the advantage of this growth and provide a supportive environment for startups, academia, and other space sector companies to work together. By bringing like-minded organizations and individuals, they can encourage collaboration, creation, as well as sharing of knowledge and wisdom. Towards this goal, I am pleased to present that the ISPA concept paper on space technology parks with focus on reforms and enablers needed to develop a framework for space technology parks as well as a comprehensive incentivization policy. It sums up the ISPA recommendation for a whole-of-nation approach to bring coordination and convergence in the efforts of both central and various state governments to make India the global hub of space industry through establishment of space technology parks. Thank you, sirs. May I please request DG to present the memento to Dr. Saraswat. May I please request our chief guest, Dr. Saraswat, to present the memento to Air Chief Marshal R.K.S. Bhadoria. Sir, may I also request you to present the memento to Mr. Ravinder. Sir, may I request all of you to please occupy your space after this for a group photograph. Sir, please. Dr. Ranjana ma'am, Dr. Sudhir sir, Dr. Anupam sir, Rajiv Ranjan sir, and Commodore K.H. Singh sir, please come to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the spearheads of the Defense Space Initiative. Please give them a big applause. Thank you so much, sir. May I please request you to please occupy your seats off stage. We shall now move on to the first panel discussion. But before we do that and the housekeeping sorts out the stage, let me give you some insights about what ISPA has been doing in the last few months. In fact, since our inception, we've been deeply engaged in policy advocacy with almost all major departments of the space ecosystem, namely Department of Telecom, Department of Space, ISRO, InSpace, NSIL, and the Ministry of Defense, the three defense services, the Defense Space Agency, DRDO, and ISRO. It's been a great inspiring journey for ISPA Secretariat as well as our esteemed industry members to engage with the defense space ecosystem and contribute our strengths for nation building. In terms of policy support, we have been dealing with the Department of Telecom on variety of subjects which range from spectrum, TEC guidelines, papers like ease of doing business, on spectrum allocation, and things to that effect. We've also constructively engaged with Department of Space in Space and ISRO on policy level discussions which started way back in 2021, where we worked with them on the Indian remote sensing policy, Indian Spacecom policy, the technology transfer policy, which were all amalgamated into the Indian space policy, which was discussed in February 2022. And thereafter, we've been also associated very deeply with various concept papers which are being taken out both by Department of Telecom and the TRI. It's been a great journey, in fact, to understand the various nuances of how different elements of space are interconnected, both from the foundational pillars of communication, remote sensing, PNT, which impact us in the open domain, as well as issues of other commercial nature, which are related to the financial system and linked policies. In the two seminars that we are going to have today, we are going to primarily see how the Indian defense space ecosystem is being energized. I would broadly put them under two building blocks. One is the young innovative ecosystem, which is primarily powered by our young startups who are coming out with fascinating innovations and achieving great heights. And at the same time, we also have the traditional heavyweights of the space ecosystem who, over a period of time, have built capabilities and made significant contributions to the Indian space ecosystem with their collaborative participation in various programs with the Indian Space Research Organization. May I now call upon the first panel to occupy the speech. May I please request our chair, Vice Admiral S.N. Gormade, PVSM, AVSM, NM, ADC, to kindly come on the stage. May I request Lieutenant General Kandare, Commodore K.H. Singh, Dr. Ranjana Nalamali, Director, DST at DRDO, Dr. Vinod Kumar, Director Promotion in Space, Mr. Vivek Virmani, DIO, Mr. Navneet Singh, CEO of Kepler, Mr. Krish Nair, CEO of Kava Space, Mr. Ankit Bhateja, Founder and Director, Jovian Aerospace, and our moderator, Mr. Kranti Chand, Head Strategy, Dhruva Space, to occupy this seats on the stage. Kranti, I now hand you over the mission control for this panel discussion. I wish you all the best, and I request you to ensure that we do it in the stated timelines. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the opening of the panel discussion. I think to start off, we would like the chair to give his opening remarks. To introduce the chair, he has also been the DGNO and has been instrumental in bringing space weather data into the naval ecosystem, and I think those are the efforts that the ecosystem has looked at to integrate how space can be a part of the defense. Over to you, sir, to do the opening.
Dr. V.K. Saraswat, Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria, Lieutenant General Bhatt, Sri Ravinder, and all the dignitaries on the dais. I firstly thank the Indian Space Association for giving me this opportunity to chair this panel discussion. that is the nurturing defense space innovation ecosystem. It's a great honor and privilege. Firstly, I'd like to draw your attention to the very topic of this seminar, that is nurturing defense space innovation ecosystem. I could see that the larger issue can be broken down into two distinct and simple yet interrelated aspects. First of all, there is a primary question of nurturing the defense ecosystem itself. So that's the first thing which we need to do. And if it is a subset of the larger issue being addressed and maybe critical or an operative phrase. The issues, if I may see, that the challenges in nurturing the defense ecosystem will equally apply to the defense space ecosystem. That means if you do nurture the defense space ecosystem, the space would also be addressed. But it has got some unique challenges. As the space system itself has got some unique challenges. And we are all aware, which was brought out in the last session itself, that there have been very many enabling provisions and policy changes that have occurred in the last 2.5 years, which are really been actually very good and transformational. And these changes are really applicable to the space sector, and especially to generate more and more startups, ecosystems in the country, so that they develop and they really bloom, and that is what is required. But this needs to be taken forward. I think, which was brought out in the last session about the launch of 75 deaf space challenges, was a watershed moment. And we need to take that forward very closely, because it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be given lots of thrust at all levels, and it has to be a complete creation of an ecosystem which enables dual use. This was Ravinder brought out very clearly, that the dual use is a must, and that is how we will be able to strengthen the defense space ecosystem. So the important and very, very critical aspects of future warfare, without doubt, is battle space transparency in land, sea and air domain. That will be there, and satellites can positively provide this battle space transparency and also awareness. They do provide and augment our intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities by providing optical and radar imagery, electronic and radio frequency monitoring, atmospheric, meteorological, oceanographic data, and undersea predictions. So this is something which we all are aware. So therefore, and you are all also aware that our adversaries are progressing in this field in leaps and bounds, and therefore we just can't lag behind in this particular stage. So space domain is positively and emerging as a major force enabler in future operations, necessitating, and therefore we need to look at it. We are really, whether it is figuratively or literally, both that we are discussing. So there are lots of entry barriers for the startups. This needs to be looked at. The quantum of investment requirement is proportionately higher. There has to be systemic mitigation of risks in the space segment. This needs to probably have a different approach. And therefore, there is no, the fact that it has been opened up to private sector, it's a very, very welcome measure. This needs to be taken very, very nicely forward. And I think the role of the bodies like Indian Space Association is extremely crucial in this. We really need to give thrust to that. Then there's also greater thrust for the private industry, more people coming into it. So therefore, there is no doubt about that there should be a large amount of industry-academia collaboration in the space domain. Panelists here will speak a lot on these issues in detail. So I would hand over to Mr. Kranti Chand to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think today we are discussing about nurturing defense space innovation, and a critical part to enable a strong innovation is having a bedrock in terms of an ecosystem. Something that is not very much known is the role that DSA is playing, and how over the last 4 years, we've seen from the conceptualization phase to actually bringing out the Defense Space Agency and the efforts that are happening. Commodore KH, can you shed a little light on what is the ecosystem and how it's being developed?
Yeah, thank you, Kranti. I think key to innovation, and it's been said time and again, is a very strong enabling ecosystem. And what I feel is that that ecosystem cannot come till the time there's a wholesome approach. And when I say wholesome approach, it is not only those factors like human capital, funding, a strong scientific base, etc. It is also the efforts of various agencies which are involved, and it is happening in India now. We see it happening in front of our eyes. Now, DSA got established in 2019, and I think it was a very well thought out decision to have a nodal agency, because space being global commons, there is a need to consolidate our requirements in space. So therefore, there was a requirement of a single window, and it came in the form of Defense Space Agency. So our journey started, having a Directorate of Special Projects in DRDO being set up alongside. And I think we were pretty lucky, because the DSP is one of the institutions of DRDO, which is the prime agency in this country in the field of R&D, especially in the defense domain. So we really started on a very positive wicket in that sense. And thereafter, a number of events happened, which kind of became the building blocks to make that ecosystem, that wholesome approach that we are talking of. Now, after setting up the DSA and the DSP, came in the government reforms, which kind of unlocked India's potential in the space sector. And that was a very big step, I would say, because it really opened up the space sector, and all those factors that I was just mentioning about, those factors are now started becoming available to the various players or to the various stakeholders. And host of startups started coming in, and the industry came in, and I'm not saying that we have arrived, but we have started kind of consolidating in terms of startups and the industry. Now, DSA on its part played a role of having intense discussions with the stakeholders, that the Army, Navy, Air Force, and in fact, we went ahead and had discussions with the NTRO and ARC also, various other stakeholders. We consolidated our kind of requirements, and ISPA played a very important role in this, because ISPA started giving us the capabilities that existed in the industry, the database of the industry, and so DSA kind of played a role of a hub, wherein on one side we were having discussions with the stakeholders, on the other side we had the startups and the industry. So we had intense discussions last 1.5, 2 years with all the agencies involved. Now, since we already had a defense innovation organization available in the country, and with a successful IDEX model, I think it didn't take us too much time to stitch all these threads together in what we today see as the Defense Space Mission. In this, I would like to place on record the support that we got from DRDO as well as from ISRO. All the agencies, in fact, which are already playing, which are already established in this sector, and this kind of provided a level playing field to all of us, and also kind of brought in clarity and direction. It gave us a direction. I am not saying once again that we have arrived, but it is a start. So I have a few recommendations maybe which could probably, the panelists can comment upon it, could maybe help bring innovation or make innovation grow faster in the space domain. The first is that we can bring together various space facilities. Now the space reforms which are brought in, they opened up the DRDO and the ISRO facilities to the startups. But I would say that there are still a lot of space innovation centers which are available in the country. I would request Ankit, Chris and Navneet to comment on it, whether it would be a good idea to kind of do a cross-pollination and use each other's facilities so that we don't bring in duplication. So that is my first recommendation. The second recommendation is, I think Chairman has also spoken about academia. Now I'll just bring out a very small observation. I was going through the Global Innovation Index report of 2020, which brought out comparison of India with various other countries in the field of innovation. One of them is academia. Now, a small simple thing like publishing scientific journals. Now, in China publishes 450,000 approximately scientific journals in 1 year. The US also does slightly less than China, by the way, but approximately the same number, whereas India does only about 1 lakh. So I think there is a need to include, and that's the start point, I would say. So therefore there is a need to involve academia in various forms. So we could start with just as simple a thing as publishing scientific journals. That's the second recommendation. My third recommendation is that when IDEX got kind of established or got introduced in the country, space was not thought about. So the funding part which was there was 1.5 crores for DISC and 10 crores for Prime. At that point in time, we had not thought about space. I think there is a need to increase that funding part. It would help out the startups also, because the cost factor in case of space is X times the normal prototypes or innovations that we do. That's my third recommendation. The fourth is that and I would like Mr. Vivek, he's not there. Mr. Vivek Romani was also on the panel, so I thought he'll comment upon this IDEX funding. I would also recommend encouraging more space innovation under the TDF. Dr. Ranjana can comment on it. I think there also the limit was 10 crores. Now I think it has got approved for 50 crores. So since we have this media also available with us, so I think some encouragement needs to be done under the TDF part for taking up space innovation. Also, this is just a proposal, we can discuss this. There are articles which have been published on this, and that is that specific allocation of budget in the union budget for space innovation. I am not saying we start big, we can start big baby steps, we can start small, but there is a need if we can, and I am sure Navneet and Chris and Ankit would support me in this, that there is a need. If we are talking so much about space, there is also a need that we have a specific allocation of budget in our union budget for space innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you brought out key information, which is budget. I think that's something that we've been asking, which is dedicated budgets for the space. You also brought out something very interesting. The Defense Space Agency came first, and then the privatization and reforms in the space sector came after the Defense Space Agency has been formed. I think that's a good chronological order that we are bringing in. I would like to bring in Dr. Ranjana. Even before we had some of these things called the Defense Space Agency, I think TDF was the first one to actually support space. You supported two technologies which are very similar, but you've been giving 90% funds towards realizing those projects. I think that being the first encourager of the space startup ecosystem started with TDF and DRDO. Can you shed light on the efforts that happened and what you see the progress from a TDF perspective, and also from what Commodore KH mentioned in terms of what can be done better?
Yeah, actually before I come to TDF, which is fairly simple for me to answer, I will just delineate how we define space as space technologies. So there is a application sector and there is a technology sector, and we call it technology families. And if you divide the technology families, Dr. Saraswat and Air Commodore Baduria touched about it, but I am finicky about numbering them and giving them specific topics, which we divide as launch propulsion systems, in-space propulsion, space power and energy storage systems, your ground and launch systems processing, robotics, telerobotics, autonomous systems, communication and navigation systems, science instruments, sensor systems, modeling, simulation, information technology and data processing, nanotechnology, material structures, mechanical systems and manufacturing, and thermal management systems. Now these are very, very broadly the technology families, And when you start to make one, it is a road which has to be taken on its own. There is a very little that you can do in isolation for a product like satellite, which is to be used. Now, these are just 10 technology families. I think they are fairly also outlined by NASA and European space agencies also. Today, the plan has become much wider. I have not talked about the human space explorations or the space stations, which we are not yet into that big way, but ISRO is working on the human space program, where we also have a little part to play based on our experience. Now beyond that, if you go, so we call it application spaces and the technology spaces. Now where is the roadmap is something which we have to really think about. We are doing whatever is coming. So when we talk about coming back to TDF, a lot of encouragement is being given into the TDF, and we are a green propulsion. There was a success and it has been taken up. Almost 5 projects are ongoing in TDF and many are in the pipeline. There is no stopping such initiatives. But when you look at these technologies, there are short-term requirements, there are medium-term requirements, and there are long-term requirements. Where are our priorities, and where do we really go ahead in each one of them becomes the most important point of investment. So when you invest and who all to invest how. If you talk about TDF till last year it was 10 crores, but now it is 50 crores. TDF also allows that if an industry feels that there is an academia required on board, it is allowed. Up to 40% of the TDF project can be given to the academia, and you can take all the people on board so that you develop really good technology with the help of the people, so that your hands are not tied that you cannot reach out to academia. Coming to the technology families, when we talk about up to TRL 3 or 4, the DRCOEs, which are called DRDO Industry Academia Centers of Excellence, there are 15 of them, something like thermal management, the materials. These are being given to the academic centers. They will do the research, and if they need the industry, if they need to go to the industry, they have been given powers to go. So both ways, you try and meet such that the industries also. So this is called as ecosystem development, where you start walking both the ways so that you are able to achieve the maximum into the in the given time frame. So those are some of very, very important initiatives I thought I would list down. But there are certain other things which need a lot of efforts, if you ask me. Space has a lot of legal aspects coming up. We need to look at, we should not miss the bus. Environmental effects are being debated quite a lot. The space debris management and defense against the space debris. Space debris could be really, really challenging, could be really risky. And cyber security of space assets. So I think Saraswat sir also told about the cyber security of these space assets. These are some of the more things which require. So for me, a comprehensive road mapping activity is what is the call for today. And then the investment in each of these areas, whether it is TDF or you require a specialized fund for space, I think it's a good idea to have a very effort in unison with all together. I think anything else I'll answer the questions.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you've taken one more step ahead in terms of pitching ideas that can be taken up. I think a critical element in terms of building those technologies, especially as startups, is understand the perspective of the user. I think the efforts over the last 3 years are evidently seen both at the outreach level from the DSA, from each of the forces having interactions with the startups. Chris, and I think you've from a space industry perspective, you've also led some of these discussions, and you had seen how these can help in building better technologies. Can you tell us your story about this and how that interaction can be improved?
Sure. Yeah, so when you're building something complex like a full stack mission like what you guys are building, or application layers or anything, we can't build in vacuum. So of course you need to talk to the end users. You can generally say it's Army, Navy, Air Force, but like, that's not the point. You have to really go down to the end user. If you're doing a broad scale maritime analysis, a commanding officer is fine, but like the Commodore are probably like, a commander who is actually working on processing that particular data. At that level, how do we get the feedback? So we were extremely lucky, right? Like, all of us in the startup ecosystem, like, at a tri-agency level, then into the mini agencies under them, they're extremely actively, like, reaching out to younger companies and sharing, like, how they would like these future systems look like and what kind of feature list they want. So that way we're extremely lucky. It's a lot of things already happened. ISPA last week, I think, organized a end user meetup, right, where about 60 or so officers and individuals turned up who were actively working on these things, and it was remarkable. And in a closed room, as technology creators, we are kind of like learning from the people who are really, really deploying these things in the field, and giving us feedback of what to keep, what to delete, what not to worry about. So we've been extremely lucky at this particular point in time. In going further, I'm fairly certain this particular thing is going to go like 4x, 5x, and all of us can learn more and create like powerful system for the warfighter.
Thank you. Well, it's a tricky situation. We don't have the IDEX here. Was having something for them, but Ankit, I think the part, we have TDF coming in, having the support that was provided. Then we had the IDEX, but most of the times when we had looked at these grant scenarios and building systems, there's something that is missing, which is not all the costs of the startups are covered. Funding becomes a critical factor. Can you shed light from a startup's perspective? How was that journey of interacting with VCs and investors? What do you see as the change that needs to come in? And do you see that the defense space challenges are driving some of those changes in the mindsets of people, and how that can be molded better towards getting more investments?
Yeah. So when we talk about our case particularly, so most of the funding that we had got, it's from two sources. First one is the government and then the private equity. But most of the times, like during our interaction with the investors, what we have observed is that there is a lack of education, particularly regarding the space sector. So when we approach investors, they usually wait for investment thesis to be developed for that particular category in which they want to invest in. But for that, they need a lot of data in order to make that investment thesis. So in order to do that, there is a lot of time and effort which investors also need to put in. So usually they wait for another investor to develop the investment thesis for them, so that just they can be the part of that round as a participatory investor. So that's where the problem lies. And if we talk about from that perspective, there are two things that can be done here. First one is that probably with the help of ISPA or InSpace is there. So these agencies can probably form some investor group. And we already know like the investors that are already active in the ecosystem, but there are certainly others that are looking into investing, but they do not know what exactly these technologies are. Because space is not just a satellite or a rocket. It is a much more complex domain and involves a lot more technologies. So if these agencies can come in and bring in some sort of stakeholders, and some sort of group can be formed in which these investors can also be given some confidence regarding this sector, that would be like much more of a important thing that can be done, particularly for the private funding in this sector. And second thing could be usually we have also seen that in India we do not have any market reports available for sector specific things. We have recently seen ISPA made a report for space sector, but before this we haven't seen any India specific report made. So investors also look from the India specific point of view, what is the market here and how the startup is trying to capture that market, and then go into the international market. So probably some sort of effort into that category can be made, so that investors can also understand the use case of the data sets from particularly geospatial category, and when we talk about launch market, how is it is going to evolve in India particularly. So these things are something which can play an important role, and that would help the ecosystem to grow much faster and come at par with the global scale. And the last thing is the dev space challenges, because this is a right step in the right direction. And what is required more here in this particular domain is that, because dev space challenges are usually, these challenges are targeted towards the defense side of the space. But whereas space has different other aspects as well. So we also need to see if there are any other agencies that can be roped in, and they can also bring in some pool of funds which can target the other remaining areas of the space applications. So these are my points which I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit. And I think, Commodore KH, that brings back, bringing out what is the requirement and how much is the investment that is going to be made from a defense perspective always can be a part of that market research and validation for the investors to come in. Dr. Vinod, slightly different question from what I actually had thought of, because Ankit mentioned it and market reports. InSpace has been working on the decadal vision plan for the space ecosystem. You've been collecting a lot of data in terms of what is happening in the market. You have, as ISRO, the largest database about who are the MSMEs, SMEs who are working on this ecosystem, what is the revenues that they're making, especially from the ISRO contracts. So I think that falls onto you as a request that, how do we bring this reports out? How do we ensure that this builds in terms of a narrative of how you can ensure funding flows into the space ecosystem? So given this insight, how do you see the InSpace role, both in terms of enabling and authorizing the defense space challenges when the companies build these products out, and in terms of that marketing and outreach towards the investors by having these reports that you're making internally out for the public to consume?
Yeah, thank you, Kranti. Okay, my term has come in the last, but it's okay, good to speak. I got perspective of all the panelists. First of all, respected General Bhatt Sahab and dignitaries on the desk and of the desk. Thank you for inviting for very apt topic. In fact, nurturing defense space ecosystem is very important, because over the years, you see the ISRO has developed capabilities, tremendous capabilities, I will say, in all the areas, whether it is launch vehicle, satellite, remote sensing, whether it is navigation satellite system of own India, then space applications. Now, if you see that we have a huge asset in space, we need to protect it. So to do this, we really need nurturing this. We need at a very fast pace. So as you know that we really welcome step was in 2009 when DSRA was formed, DSA was formed, NSIL was formed, and post that came Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. I hope all of you know that side, because we feel very this thing when people say that I am not aware of space sector reforms. So there are many things which are happening by the government, and we really need to augment it at a very fast pace. And we know that. Be it the missile detection and tracking system from space. Now you do from the ground, it has limitations, but we should do it from space. Not only that, when you connect GEO, LEO, MEO and these ground radar systems, is very important. They are high-tech areas which our industries should come. Now coming to the steps which are taken by the industry or by government also, and in particular to InSpace. So InSpace, when it was formed in 2020, and our office was inaugurated in 2022. So we have started working on all these things, which aim of promotion of space, then enabling authorization and supervision. This covers almost all the questions, and I will tell you some of the achievements which we have made. So first of all, this enabling the collaboration. Yes, it's very important point raised by all the I think panelists, that academia should be a part of this ecosystem, and they have been developing some technologies which I see up to TRL level 3 and 4 only. So, but what happens to them? Some of them are adopted into the system, some of them should remain in the literature only, books only. It doesn't come out of that. And we have many in ISRO. So what we are thinking on this, I have suggested to the chairman that these technologies can be put up and the private industry can take up them forward to develop the further up to TRL 8 and 9. It's a very important suggestion which is coming up. Investing in space research and development, yes, this needs a greater push to do this activity. However, ISRO is doing, but the synergy is required with the private sector and industry also. We have at InSpace started seed fund scheme, which we are announcing shortly. So this will, it will a kind of application. Innovative ideas should not go waste because of need of funds. So with that we have started, and we are announcing shortly the details within this month or next month. So that is the another thing. Promoting entrepreneurship and small businesses. For that, we have expert database, which we have already providing support to Indian industry on demand basis. Please keep visiting our website, InSpace Digital Platform. You can connect by registering your industry. Many of you are registered already. Around 500 academia institutes are working with us, and they are in touch with what all we are doing. So this is another thing. Then fostering culture of innovation, very important. So to aid this seed fund scheme, we are having MOU maybe by 15th or so with IDEX, DIO, to help them take forward this defense space challenge, and we will help them with the help of expert support, using facilities. As Commodore Sir was mentioning, that it's really correct that they need a lot of money to establish the facilities. As per the Government of India policy, which InSpace is mandated that all ISRO facilities can be used by the private industry. So people are taking benefit of all this, and they did not apply through email or this. They have to go to our InSpace digital platform, apply online. I think Durva has been using this for left and right, this platform. So that is also started. Even establishing the facilities within ISRO premises is also started. Now moving on, providing access to talented resources. I have told that we have been providing resources to the industry. Additionally, we should develop to sustain this ecosystem and develop the Space Force printers. As told during the inaugural address by the dignitaries, that we should have Space Force curriculum we should develop. So I am glad to tell you that we have developed a space technology minor, and it is adopted in IIT Bombay and IIT Madras. IIT Madras January batch has been already learning the space technology course. They have started. I would be very happy to tell you that they told that only 60 students can register, but by the time they could close the limit, 75 has already registered. IIT Madras. So next is IIT Bombay. All approval are taken, and many IIT and even UGC chairman wants in all the colleges. And yes, we will do it. Maybe within 6 months or by this year end, we are targeting that also. So these are the some of things. Hope it answers your questions. About decadal vision and strategy, I am just coming. Yes, we have started study, and our consultants already on board, and 1 month we are completing this. It will be out by April end. It will be a very comprehensive report covering Indian ecosystem, what are the way forward for the decade, as well as international also. And dedicated research we are planning for international also. That study also will be done. So we are there to nurture it, and I'm sure that thing is started with the help of all of us. Certainly we'll move forward. Thank you. Looking forward to take it further.
Thank you, sir. I think 2 points that were mentioned by the panel members. One was in terms of co-sharing of facilities The second was in terms of investment that needs to go in for startups to build things. With us, we have Navneet, it's a different model that they've built altogether. They're working very closely with an MSME, building that ecosystem, which is using the already existing infrastructure to the benefit. Looking more closely at designing things for contractual tenders and bringing that indigenous solutions to the market. I think, Navneet, you've played a critical role in building a lot of technologies that are going into satellites in India, both at ISRO and DRDO over the last 3 years. Can you tell us the story of how this partnership has come and what would be the next steps that you can see from this?
Thank you, Kranti. That was an excellent question, and of course, my answer would pave the road forward, at least pave the way forward to answer some of the pertinent points raised by some of our panel members, mainly vis-a-vis regarding the working capital requirements and the co-sharing of facilities. So when we started Kepler in 2018, space is a very expensive field to get into. It's a very niche field to get into. Networks are hard to come by. And when you go and ask an equipment supplier for the price of a single space grade component, you realize you're in the wrong business. But then you realize, no, I actually have to build something. So what did we do is we went to an MSME with 18 years of experience in space systems, 18 years of experience in sourcing components, 18 years of experience in tendering government works. And we basically had what I call, unashamedly, I call it a parasitic symbiotic relationship. It works for us, it works for them. We do design, they do manufacturing. They help us with working capital, we help them with providing the manpower as well as the testing manpower that is required to actually run their projects. Well, now we have actually formalized that parasitic symbiotic relationship as a JV. That's a different thing entirely, but it works. So how does it actually work? They allow access to their facilities. We are able to use those facilities and work on joint projects with them. They have an excellent network already in their established customer base, where our name can go. So we actually create a network by leapfrogging and sitting on their backs. And it actually helps us a lot because now there is name brand recognition for Kepler in multiple of our customer bases. And it helps us to get more projects. But the more projects we get, the better the joint venture becomes. Because in the end, I have to go back and get manufacturing done, sourcing done, and additional manpower constraints that are there for such projects are not there for us. So I will, based on all these things, it allows Kepler to focus a lot on R&D. Our JV partner, our MSME partner, I did not take the name, the Aiden Technologies, they have been in this field for a very long time. So I don't have the issues of where to find a component. If my designer tells me I need this high-rel part for a space grade system, I don't have to run around talking to OEMs because I can just ask my partner. Because of his sourcing expertise and his networks and his relationships, I can get a sample part even if they would never give that sample part to anybody else. So with this unique sourcing and unique structure, the working capital requirements, the manpower constraints are not a constraint for us. That allows us to work on a variety of projects that a normal startup would never even think about doing. We are working on the Gaganyaan project. We are working on many DSP projects. We run multiple satellite command centers for ISRO for the last 2 years. That is all because of the different way that we decided to go forward with the way we want to see. We have to ensure that your partner is happy with you and you are happy with your partner. And if you do that, the possibilities are endless. And we have seen that happen, and we are quite happy because it allows us, as I said before, it allows us to focus on ensuring that we keep generating new IP, and it allows us to not worry about things like working capital, where do I get access to hardware, where do I get access to infrastructure, because it's there and it's beneficial to everyone. And I think it has worked quite well for us. And now coming to what Kranti had said, we are able to focus on contracts, government tenders, because we all know government tendering is a very, very interesting long gestational cycle period systems. You do the work and then you wait for a very long time for money to come in. But then how do you survive? We survive because we have a benefactor helping us. And that, I don't consider it as an investment for them. I consider it as a partnership. Because not only are they able to tackle projects that they would normally not be able to, we are able to work on projects that we would never even think about. I mean, we are in essentially a space-based persistent surveillance ISR startup, but we also do things like drone data links. We build high-speed data links for the Tejas aircraft. I mean, these are not the areas where we would have seen ourselves, but because of the great partnership that we have, we are able to do these things. So I think this could be a way forward where, different startups can handhold, or, it's a mutual handholding between an MSME and a startup, or a bigger company and a startup, where both can grow together and both can, tackle new challenges together. So I think, and of course, I would like to thank ISPA for organizing this great panel where we can all share our views. And I think that would be the end of my answer.
Thanks. I think that brought out a new way of actually how startups can work and do things, and how we can benefit in terms of not losing equity and still running businesses. General Khandare, I think over the last 3 years, we've seen a sea of change. User interaction has increased. There's been a lot more effort in terms of understanding the industry layout, what is the capabilities matrix. The IDS had conducted their own survey. The Indian Navy has sent out resources to each of the startups to do their survey. As Chris mentioned, now we are able to talk from the bottom level to the top level to understand what the user perspective or what user requirements are and build solutions for that. How do you see this change, and what is your expectation from the industry for meeting the challenges in defense space over the next decade?
Thank you, Kranti. I think we are all sitting on a stage after 4 months. Last time we were there in Gandhinagar, and it's time to take stock of what has happened. When I heard Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria, Dr. Saraswat speaking, I've been having discussions with General Bhatt. There is a kind of orientation which is again required to be brought in. The first thing is, as a nation, what are we going to use space for, especially in the defense sector? At macro level, no nation wants to go to war. So space has to be used for war avoidance. I think that is where the private sector, the academia, the research organizations, everyone has to understand to start looking at research work so that we leapfrog, go ahead in a manner that our identified adversaries as well as those who are not identified should not have evil designs on the nation. And that is exactly where, when you hear the Prime Minister saying, what is his dream? His dream is to have a Viksit Desh. A Viksit Desh can only stop in its path if you are pulled into a conflict, or you are pulled into a situation where you have to start diverting your resources for something which is not desirable. So I think first thing which everyone in this ecosystem has to understand, that there is one goal for defense space, and that is war avoidance. I talk to you from the position of policy. When we were making this draft CCS note, General Bhatt then was the DGMO and I was in the DIA. We were working out how DSA should take shape. At that stage, everyone wanted the space command to come up. Now, this is exactly what I am saying, that we cannot always start with an ideal solution. We have to start by milestones. As we achieve something, then we go to the next step. And the same thing is applicable for the ecosystem for the entire space sector. let's sit down and ask ourselves, have we pushed enough suggestions for policy reform, whether it is for cross-pollination, as Commodore K.H. Singh said? Have we pushed in policy reforms for funding? Have we pushed in policy reforms for training? Whom are we going to train? A smart space sector should be training the people who control the funds. Have we pushed that? I don't think. We have not even thought of that. We are expecting the auditor and the finance controlling authority to get self-educated. We are here to help you to form or formulate policy provided somebody gives it a push. How did these 75 challenges get thrown up in IDEX? Somebody had to take an initiative. So I think let's start talking something beyond this system of the startups. They will take care of themselves. They will definitely walk, then they'll run. But by the time they start running, where is the policy? So I think more important is to get into the policy sector simultaneously. Dr. Ranjana said about the ideal roadmap, short term, mid term, long term, absolutely correct. And if we have that vision of a roadmap, then automatically we'll look at policy at each stage. A simple thing like NAVIC. Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria said a GPS denied environment. Have we looked at a policy from the services to say that each and every service is going to use NAVIC, whatever be the outcome? We will struggle. We will initially crawl, then we will stand up. But unless we have a compatibility of NAVIC, the equipment that we are planning to buy should not be bought. I think that is the kind of bold decision that we have to take. The amount of money being increased, whether it's in TDF or IDEX, or the thought process is extremely good. There's no doubt about it. ISRO, as the elder brother or a father figure, has to do a lot for handholding of DSA, DSP, DRDO, because there are many challenges which we have still not thought of. And that is where I think ISRO will have to take a major look at how they want to nurture and bring up the capabilities of DSA to a level. If we have thought of 10 years, how can we compress it to 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years? Unless we dream big, we are not going to achieve anything. And if we are going to dream small, then every 4 months we'll keep sitting here and talking. It's not going to take us anywhere. One point which you mentioned was about the IIT collaboration. I want to give an example here. In the National Security Advisory Board, we have a famous personality known as Mr. Sridhar Vembu. Mr. Sridhar Vembu, everyone knows, is a person who has come back to India, and he has done a lot and he is doing a lot. But there is something which, while discussing with him, I realized that wise and genius people like Sridhar Vembu have something to say. He said, why only IIT? Why not regional engineering colleges? The kind of attrition that you have from people from the elite colleges is very high. We need solid, rock solid engineers from other colleges also who will stay put here, who are not going anywhere. I think that is a suggestion we all need to look at very seriously, and it's not only the creamy layer which should always be working in these sectors. A very small suggestion from my side. Maybe everyone can think about that. One last point about the rules of the game, and again maybe this is where DSA comes into play. The government functions based on allocation of business rules, transaction of business rules. We've done nothing towards that. Unless we get that right, people will not know who's supposed to do what. So let us carve out the space for DSA. Obviously, DSA will be working under the CDS and headquarter IDS, but this is something which is most fundamental. DSA has been in existence for about 3.5 years now, precisely I think 3.5 years. Started from 2018 October. Yeah, we take time of sanctioning because that is when your Janam Patri was written. So it is high time that we start looking at serious things and we start progressing at a much faster rate. I have spoken only from the point of MOD, from the policy part, and what Kranti you had asked me, most of it was answered by the Defense Secretary in the initial part itself. So I thought I'll not repeat that, but make some additional points. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the time.
Just quickly, to Lieutenant General Khandare Sahab has raised the point of that why not other colleges? Very right. This was the question raised in our board meeting also, and I am pleased to tell that UGC chairman himself has agreed that in all the colleges, he told around 44,000 colleges, this space technology minor course will be available, but it is taking shape. So now it has started, we will record the lectures, and subsequently, certainly we are eyeing all the colleges, not only NITs, IITs, all colleges, whoever comes forward, including the private industry. So we are certainly extending it to all, and we will be happy.
So I'll just add to it, the DIA Center of Excellence, which are there in the IITs, they are just the nodal centers. The project proposals come from across that region, all RECs, even the smaller colleges. If there is a bright idea, they need not come to headquarters directly, they send it to these centers of excellence, and then they take a call and sanction the projects. So in entirety, we want to cover the entire country. That's the initiative.
I'll tell you exactly why I made this point. Kranti, I'll just take 1 minute more. There are a large number of engineering colleges which have geospatial faculty, and interestingly, they are working only on open source data. That doesn't help. That is where the services have to come in. You have to get your act right on how much of data to share, which is of not a classified nature today. So I think that is again kind of reaching out to each other. Otherwise, if our youth of tomorrow who are going to be the practitioners, they are still elementary in their education, they'll not be job ready.
True, sir. Plenty more questions and things that could be done, but I think unfortunately we are at the end of the time. For the chairman for a closing note.
Yeah, thank you very much. Each one of you really spoke out from the heart, and there were questions and there were frank opinions and there were some solutions also. I think this is a moment that we need to take forward, because space and defense space is an extremely important element which we need to progress, and we really need to pole vault, not only leapfrog. And for this, there has to be a whole of nation effort. There has to be effort from everybody, and I thank the ISPA to bring everybody on the stage, from the DSA to DRDO to policy to the entrepreneurs, and so that we need to exchange issues, exchange ideas, and we need to have some outcome-oriented actions. Like General Khandare brought, policy needs a real thrust, and there has to be outcome oriented, and we need to work hard together, and in a manner, how do we find solutions and move ahead, because we may discuss here but we may not implement. There's no point. We need to go ahead and implement together. So I would request everyone to work together, and let's, when we meet next time, we have some solutions ahead and outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was, in fact, a very, very engrossing session, with some fantastic pointers made out. May I please request DG ISPA to kindly come on the stage and present memento to our panel head, Vice Admiral S.M. Gurmale. request our panel head, Vice Admiral Gurmani, to now give the mementos to our panelists. May I request Lieutenant General Khandari to please step forward and accept the memento. Commodore K.H. Singh, sir. Commodore K.H. Singh. Dr. Ranjana ma'am. Dr. Vinod. You can keep bringing it simultaneously. We'll save on time. Kranti. Navneet. Sir, we got a long list. Mr. Chris Nair. Mr. Ankit Bateja from Zovian Space. May I request all of you to please step forward for a group photograph. DG sir, may I please request you to join us. Our Chief of Panel, Vice Admiral Gurmade sir, and the entire panel. May I please request you to please occupy your seats off stage. While the stage is being set for panel 2, I'll just give you some good insights on how this mission in defense space all came about. The story is very interesting and very inspiring because this is one of the most inspiring programs I have seen unfold in the shortest span of time. So Mission Defense Space, the first story started on the 7th of April last year when we had a presentation done by the Indian Space Association to the Committee of Secretaries, which was headed by the then, may I request all guests to please occupy the chairs, please. There's more to this seminar, so my request to all our guests is continue to occupy your seats. Please come, sir. May I request you all to please settle down as we are starting our next panel discussion. Yes. Wait. I would now like to request our co-chair for the second session, Air Marshal B.R. Krishna, PVSM, AVSM, Shaurya Chakra, Chief of Integrated Defence Staff, to the Chiefs of Staff Committee, to please occupy his chair on the stage. May I request AVM Rajiv Ranjan, Assets, PP and FS, Headquarter IDS, Dr. Sudhir Kumar, Director, CBPO, ISRO, Dr. Anupam Sharma, Associate Director, Directorate of Special Products, Projects, DRDO, Mr. Vinod S. Chipakalti, President, Strategic Electronics Business Unit, Centum Electronics, Mr. Sunil Indurti, Director, Azista, BST, Aerospace, to kindly come and occupy their seats on the stage. Our moderator for the afternoon is Mr. Lakshmesh from L&T. Sir, may I please request you to come in and take your space. The topic of the discussion today by the panel is strengthening defense-based military industrial complex, way forward for India. I hand you over to our moderator, Mr. Lakshmesh, for the proceedings of the panel, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. I hope.
Hello.
Yeah, I think this is better. Let me put this off. So, good afternoon, everyone. And thanks, Satyam, for putting up a fantastic panel here. Now, I've been known to be a tough moderator, but Satyam, I want to fail today as a moderator for 3-4 reasons. One, my previous mediator Kranti has set a good precedence for me for stretching. Number two, there is no session after this. And number three, there are such great people whom I would not dare stop if they are talking. Right? So please excuse me for not being a good moderator today. So you have time to explain. Yeah. And most importantly, the last point is, I see enormous enthusiasm amongst the audience here. And certainly I think that's what needs all the time here for. So, panelists, we are talking about the strengthening the defense ecosystem in the country. The previous panel discussed about how to nurture innovation, and there were brilliant perspectives that had come out. We believe that strength is a prerequisite for peace, and after securing the country from sea, land, air, of course people talked about space being the fourth, but somehow I would like to put it as the fifth frontier, because the cyber security is an essential part, and now space, so therefore I would call as a fourth physical domain but fifth domain for securing. So there was also a talk about setting up Space Force. Now whether the Space Force is to prevent war or to support war or to engage in war, I think the time will say. We would now like to discuss during this panel about how, once the innovations that are all up there, how the ecosystem needs to be evolved, developed to convert these innovations to solutions, product, finally which support or be the guiding force in building self-reliance in securing. So when we look at an ecosystem, we generally talk about the customers or the end users, the designers or the great brainy guys. We talk about system integrators, we talk about various value chain partners, and today in this panel we have all of them. And therefore we do have here a complete ecosystem. And when we look at space as a sector, space we see that typically it is broken down into three streams. That is the upstream, which is fundamentally into space R&D, the launch vehicles and satellites, and midstream, which is more into ground stations, ground systems and communication, satcoms infrastructure, and upstream, which is more to do with satellite data information and applications to the end users. So I would like to request co-chair to please share his perspectives on how the defense space ecosystem is taking shape and going to become a dominant force in this country. Sir.
Good evening and Jai Hind. And I thank the moderator, Sri Lakshmesh, for setting up the stage with all the panelists to take out this strengthening the defense space military industrial complex. I think since the word defense is there, it's very important that that's the reason you find a lot of defense people on the stage, is the importance of space in defense applications and in future wars. Invariably, we think wars as a very kinetic way of doing things, but wars is also a way of doing non-kinetic way of things. And that is where the importance of space, where it is, as we say, a common usage in the space high above, as they say, above 100 kilometers, is where a lot of things can be done without knowing what is happening there. And most of us would like to know that in the defense, every spectrum of space which is available or likely to be available is going to be a very important enabler, either in peace or in future war. Space is there in every sphere of our, actually in the armed forces, be it for simple things like communication to PNT in terms of navigation, timing, precision, and we talk of geospatial intelligence, and each and every aspect is very important. And where we are today, as we mentioned, the Defense Space Agency is a fledgling in terms of just 3 to 4 years, and I'm sure we have a roadmap, and we aspire to be a very important spacefaring nation, not only in the civil domain, but also on the military sphere. Though space technology is usually termed as dual use, because nobody knows how it is used and who are the end users. But in terms of the armed forces, each and every aspect is very important. And we are looking, as you rightly mentioned, we want to call it the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension. I think that is where our ambition is, to create a niche for ourselves in the armed forces. And that is where all of us here play a very important role. As we were sitting in the previous panel discussions, I think few things have been done and more has to be done to achieve what we want to do. And I just want to mention a few things in terms of capabilities, though we are looking at a lot of, in terms of having the space reconnaissance capability, which is, I would say, all pervasive, 24/7. Do we have enough capabilities or eyes in the sky? Today's answer is no. Do we need it? The answer is yes. How do we move ahead? That is where we all make a difference, and that is where the ecosystem will actually help us. That we need to put as many satellites which will be able to orbit over us and give us 24/7 coverage of the areas of interest, which is important for our national security. So getting these satellites up in the right orbits, be it LEO, MEO, or the geo orbits, are equally important. Various inclination angles, we know the capabilities of the payloads and the sensors on board are important. And today when we speak of network-centric force, space becomes a very important element of that network-centric capability and network-centric operations, without which it will not be able to have the full capability as we aspire. That is where we want to have space capabilities in terms of the sensors, the payloads, and also the ground infrastructure. At the end of it, when we get so much of data, what do we do with it? We need machine learning and artificial intelligence to able to absorb it and to disseminate the information in near real time or real time to the end user, and use that information intelligently to be able to shorten what we call as sensor to shooter loop. The essence of using space is to reduce that time, and who is able to do it faster would be able to win the next war. So the importance of space is, I would like to say, in maybe a decade or so, we have to achieve this as a nation. And in terms of building up the ecosystem, I'm aware there are various challenges, and as was alluded to earlier, we did throw up those challenges of dev space, as was alluded by one of the speakers. And this is one way to actually woo the people who are capable of doing this. And people are there to take up the challenge and execute the processes. The other challenges is to beef up the system is because space is not cheap business. It is capital intensive. How do you get the capital? Who will invest? Are there enough people to invest? Are we ready to take that risk? Because we generally tend to be risk averse. So we need to take the risk to be able to invest, incubate those people who are ready to develop the technology and put it into space. And also this will actually boost the confidence of the various people who are working in the space sector. Then we have challenges of human resource, and do we have the right talent? People spoke only about IIT, then people said we have to go to all the institutions which are there in the country, because that bright idea may be with that chap sitting in the remote corner. Are we able to harness that bright idea and convert that into, implement into a reality? And that's very, very important. So are we able to spread that awareness and reach out? I think we have a lot to do there. Then is the issue of, because we had only one big brother as the ISRO, now so many other small teams are mushrooming, who will do the hand-holding? Then there's a challenge of certification of this, whatever you make there, who will certify it to ensure it goes to the space? And who's the right agency? Presently, people are still trying to find their, put this step in the right place. Then is, of course, the software and the hardware ecosystem. I mean, in terms of software, I'm sure we are one of the best leading in the world. And the hardware is the challenge, where we still procure quite a few things from abroad. Can we make the entire hardware in India so that we are not dependent? So that is another challenge. We are aware the chip industry is trying to set up a foothold in our country, which will help us move away from the dependence we have today. Going further ahead is, of course, is how do we do the procurement we do in the armed forces. We need to move away from our legacy practices of doing procurement in space. If we have to be fast or go in the speed of a rocket, so we need to change our systems. That is something we need to tweak our system to make it more, as they say, ease of doing business, which is very, very important. And are we, like we have done the challenges in dev space, Can we do other challenges which can be done, which are available, or avenues, or create new avenues to do that? And most importantly is to get everybody together. That is, how do we synergize our approach so that getting everybody. So as I look ahead, I think since the time ISPA has come into being, I think they have taken on this mandate, but we have to, I think, we have to able to digest much more than what we are doing today. I think overall, I think we have the fundamentals going, but we need to strengthen them and take them ahead. So I would look to look ahead from other panelists to contribute to our making the defense ecosystem more stronger, robust, so that tomorrow our nation is strong and is in the league of the nations, where we don't only get products for ourselves, but also be able to give it to other friendly foreign countries. Because most of the products at times we buy, some countries operate what is called build, operate and maintain. We take the services. Today we are only a captive service that we buy, we put it in the orbit, and we also maintain them and use the service. That is a very costly business. You have a business model which will that ecosystem that companies can send the satellite to space, services are available, and you keep buying the services and also sell it to other countries. I think this is another model which we have to look to, especially to grow into commercial space business, what other countries are doing. I would stop here and allow other panelists to speak on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for setting that context. You actually touched upon, I will go in the reverse order, the model of acquisition. It need not necessarily be acquisition, it could be service. Then you also talked about one very important thing, the legacy procurement process need to be tweaked for space, the certification, and I think most importantly you touched about the essence of time and health. So I'm sure the panel members will take up these points to discuss. I would like to start the conversation first with AVM Rajiv Ranjanji. Sir, the defense space, DSA, DSP, and the concept of bringing in systems and solutions from the industry has evolved as part of this initiative. I would like you to speak upon the way this initiative would create opportunities, market, and the systems by which the industry would address these opportunities.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, ISPA, Chair, Moderator, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. While I'll talk upon the aspect highlighted by the moderator, some of the other aspect I also highlight from the user's perspective, and also what our expectations are from the industry. Armed forces are bullish about a space segment, primarily because of DSA and DSP coming in. Clarion call for Atmanirbharta, civilian sector and ISRO having some great successes in the recent past, Agni-1 or SSLV, or even the policy by the government is becoming quite favorable. So, as highlighted earlier, in the peace and the war, both time, space becomes very important. Primarily, it gives us something called as a clear edge on the OODA loop, observe, orientate, decide, and act. And the two segments of satellite and drones are the one which is our core strength as of now, can give us a head start, especially when the two adversaries are belligerent. And generally, you are on the defensive and they take the aggression. So first mover's advantage, you can nullify if you have ISR and mobility strong. Checkmate him from the state where he can't go into the another thrust line. So space, that is the place where you bring the peace and also the war and edge into the war. Also, because you are the dual use, you have a clear head start over the other industry to help the country to achieve 5 trillion economy and 35,000 of export in the defense. And at end of this 7 to 8 years, we expect some of you would be SpaceX or Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic. Armed Forces, we dream that in the next 5 to 7 years, we'll have multiple constellation to give us a revisit time of less than 15 minutes and ISR capability of less than half a meter. We have been talking a lot in terms of the capability. First thing first, what is the need and the budget? In the terms of need, we are looking at a very high resolution electro-optical SAR LNT comment constellation, which provide real-time visibility into our area of responsibility, primarily on the periphery and IOR. We also need space and the based and the land-based space situational awareness. We need space-based surveillance and the warning system for ballistic and hypersonic missile, ASAT capability, ground element, networking, processing, management, training, AI and ML-based NGF application, communication and the networking to give us NCO capability, even SSTO, TSTO, reusable rocket or space shuttle. Why not have them? Launch and demand capability gives you and much more. Also, lastly, I would like to highlight is your survival and security. Cyber security and the physical security. And how do you defeat the enemy's capabilities? So those are the things in the space segment and the technologies we are looking at to give us an edge on the situational awareness. Navig card, sir, yes, already we are working for the Navig card order and handheld communication system. Chair was my boss in 2015. A letter was issued way back in 2015 to all the fleets that we need to change our iron GPS with a Navig card. That is the vision we had started working with. So also, as we are moving ahead, during the ASQR formulation, sir, technology is rapidly shifting. Handhold us, guide us, industry and academia both. When we are looking at 75 problem statement for defense IDEX, one of the problem statement was launch and demand. And the problem statement said 700 kilometer orbit, 650 kg satellite. I asked Pushpa, are we looking at this technology and capability? Have we done our homework? Have we met the industry and academia? All we require is 30 to 50 kgs and 300 to 500 kilometer orbit. So guys, as a blue uniform and the armed forces, we are aware. You need to guide us, handhold us. You know the innovation, you know the technology, you know the industry. You need to take us in the lead. Otherwise, we'll be technology follower. All the time, what enemy has got, I'll ask you to make that. Please take us into the lead. Next comes enhanced performance parameter. DAP allows us to get technologically superior product, allow us to 10% of the parameters to be, or the cost wise to be governed to give us a technically superior product. DRDO, DDP, I hope they will allow us to fill those requirements from the private sector. Okay, next is opportunities, registration and the businesses for the industry. The first thing is first, you need to register yourself with certain entities. Already ISPA has been given those email addresses, how to go about doing that. Next thing was in the earlier panelist, somebody was talking of how do you educate the guys? Feasibility report and other format which are required to assess the competency level of the industry, and thereafter PDR and the CDR, preliminary design review and critical design review, to assess the success rate. Those are the things which you need to help us to formulate quickly so that we move ahead on the path of the success rather than struggle into the valley of death. large number of IDEX, TDF, and other make 2, make 3 avenues are there. Individually, you all can come to us, we'll guide you to how to get into ahead. Collaboration and working with strength. Each one of you know your strength. Why don't you partner? Why don't DSP and to start with ISRO themselves work together to take the industry forward? And the ISPA can play a critical role into this. Educate your environment, and ISPA can do this, and this is what ISPA has been doing to help us in those 75 problem statements. We normally get 100 weeks to, we have been clocking 100 weeks to formulate feasibility ASQR to go to AON. We are trying to achieve 100 days with the help of them. Planning process and the capital, it's now scientific process is happening, 5-stage, top-down, driven by Chief of Staff and CDS himself, and you will not find us asking tank, aircraft, submarine combined into one, not asking unreasonable amount of effort, resources. It will be budget, what we are likely to get, those are the things. And for the space segment and for the industry, 68% of this year's, coming year's budget, 1.35 lakh crore. 92,000 crore or the business next year is for the civil industry. If I had to put just 2 to 4% of our capital budget for the next 10 years, that brings down anything up to 80,000 crore rupees in next 10 years for the space segment. That is the kind of business we are. Are we ready? Are we going to deliver to the armed forces in the time? Don't ask them that you are changing goalposts because you can't deliver on the time. Standards and the quality. Large number of standards and the quality norms are already established. Learn from Koreans and South Koreans. South Koreans and Turkey. They have adopted those norms. They are making equipment which is NATO compatible. So they get export. You make your own standard. Nobody is looking at your standard because it's not compatible with them. So you have SOSA, CMOS, MORA, whole lot of these jargons are there in the, adopt those and you will find you will be compatible. Already ISPA and other agencies, we have told them what are these standards, please adopt. Next is, so 50,000 crore is with Principal Scientific Advisor for second tier of the engineering college. Identify 12 colleges, 100 crore to each of them for the 5 years for the space segment. All is required 1,200 crore rupees from that kitty, and ISPA, may I request to take the lead along with headquarter IDS, we are more than willing. To sum up, energy is right, time is right, everybody is willing to work. As the Prime Minister said, you have a technology, you have willingness, you have capability, work together and you will see that you will achieve Atmanirbharta, which is our dream. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was quite an elaborate one. All that I picked up from an industry perspective is talking about an 80,000 crore market over the next 8-10 years. And then you also mentioned about don't ask me technology, give me solution. Don't talk me about standards, you establish the standards. So that's the message that I think I'm summing to the industry. Going forward, I would like to request Dr. Anupam Sharmaji, who is representing the Directorate of Special Project DSP. Sir, we heard the various opportunities that are there, 75 challenges. Then we also talked about the initiatives being taken by DSA. Now, DSP is also developing its own technologies, its own solutions. And I'm sure you would be deploying that for the use of the Indian defense. So I would like to request you to throw some light on how are the technologies and solutions developed by DSP are different or overlapping or supporting the 75 challenges that have been put forth for DSP to the industry. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. You see, these 75 challenges which were put by DSA, it came to me in month of August, and I was sitting on computer continuously and I was very confused that whether it is right or wrong on my part to decide that space can be handled by startups and industry. But then one day I got an idea in the night that I was reading a book of Stephen R. Covey. He said, give fish to a person, you feed him for the day. Teach him how to catch fish, you feed him for the lifetime. And I thought DRDO and ISRO should play this major role. Another thing is I have spent most of my time with the services. I don't have a vardi, but I feel everybody is a soldier in this hall. So keeping that spirit in mind, I compiled those 75 challenges with a very positive insight. I feel that the ideas does not belong only to the scientist, it belongs to all of us. Keeping in mind that many of the challenges which were posed by DSA, I have put that this can be thrown open to the industry also. And those challenges are in the field of satellite communication, the launchers, the space-based RF sensors, imagery sensors, microsatellite development, and the ground infrastructure. But let me tell you one thing, that space is a costly affair. In fact, from DRDO itself, I have learned many things from space. We know this sitting here. We were not knowing that how to qualify a FPGA electronics when it has to be fused and it has to be put in space, where Centum came to our rescue, and today they have got a qualified process. So nobody is small, nobody is big. Together we have to put effort towards the defense of this country. So there are two aspects very important for any startup and industry, which I want to tell you. No doubt it is profitable, but the qualification of electronics in space, I have already seen by having a satellite working for last 3.5 years. It's a very big challenge where we took help of industry and also ISRO. So similar ecosystem we have to develop. When qualification comes, we have to go to ISRO. We should not shy away for the industry who have already process qualified technologies, and we should do it. Second, very important, in fact, I want to share with you that I visited many startups, and many agencies have given some space-based products. Let me tell you, with my experience working in electronic warfare for last 30 years, I want to tell you, when you put the application at high altitude, it is not going to work. My worry is that the startup may take up, the industry may take up some technologies, they will put in a high altitude, it will not work. One of the example is, if you put a comment receiver which is working on ground, qualified for space, put it, it is not going to work because of the frequency reuse problem. So we require to have a ground infrastructure, an appropriate setup to be established before we put anything in the space. And that is where DRDO and ISRO have to help the industry. Second thing is very important, that we have to connect our timelines, what we want, along with the startup and the industry. For example, one of the startup, very young, he came to me and he was telling, sir, if you give us 50 crore rupees, I can realize this particular technology. I really saluted the kind of enthusiasm they have, but then I asked them, do you know that what input you require to realize this technology and make it applicable to the space? He said, no. I said, it requires 50,000 crore rupees spending by the government. Now, question is that I have to tell that what are the priorities we have, and we should not allow startup and industry to fail. That is one thing. Another point which you brought out, that I want to tell you that DSP and DSA, we have got the same horoscope. So we are born at the same time, and we are born together. We together have drawn a vision of 30 years, and that vision has to be made successful in the coming years, whether I live or not. And that is where that ecosystem has to help us to make that vision successful. From DRDO side, DSP is not alone. We have got the support of 10 different laboratories who are going to help us to realize various products. And I think that with kind of ecosystem which is going to be developed, we are going to be successful in transform this world. What Khandare sir told that we have to be powerful. So Mahatma Gandhi also said that if you want to be at peace, you have to be powerful. So we require a very strong ecosystem, good space protection, a lot of assets in the space, for which DSA and DSP under the aegis of IDS headquarters we are working, and I can tell you together will not disappoint this country, and in the coming years it will happen, and our country will feel proud that we as a nation have addressed the security requirements of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for bringing that very clear perspective. I would now move on to Dr. Sudhir Kumar, Director CDPO at ISRO. Sir, ISRO is Bab of space in the country, Big Bab. Anything that has been in this country, space of this country has been of ISRO. Now going forward, defense is something which is not the specific mandate of ISRO. And how would therefore ISRO help the industry in terms of technologies that are developed for civilian purposes, peaceful purposes? How would ISRO help in providing or assisting in facilities, in testing and in qualifications? And fundamentally, like there was a lot of mentioning about hand-holding and building. So as Bob, request you to share the ISRO perspectives on building this ecosystem.
Thank you, Lakshmesh. Since the first session, right from Badriya Saab, Khandare ji, then Saraswat ji and Rajiv ji, especially we know that everybody is looking at ISRO for the support. Obviously, because it is the institution started 50 years back, struggled on self-reliance when all the technologies were denied, and nurtured, soiled the hands and developed the materials, developed the technologies, and with the indigenous capability right from probably 100 kg to 4-ton satellite building, 6-ton satellite building, ISRO developed the capabilities. No doubt on that one. Now the question is how the defense space will be enabled, or defense space industry will be enabled, and challenges will be enabled. The ecosystem will be built and the support will be extended, hand-holding, facility sharing. Anyhow, Dr. Vinod has explained that there is a mechanism, regulatory mechanism and promotion mechanism that is in place. Because nevertheless, when it is in the government, you're all guided by procedures. You're all guided by some policies. We are all guided by some kind of mechanisms, SOPs. But of course, ISRO, as everybody tells that, it always will be proactive. Anticipating the, let us say, reforms, the moment the government has announced the reforms, without being constituted the in-space mechanism, iSpa mechanism, and whatever the mechanism that we started working. In fact, all the MOUs that were signed by Sky Road, that was signed by Digantara, that was signed by even well before in-space formation, ISRO started proactively working with them, telling them how to work, what to work, this statement is not correct. I think people will speak about the ISRO, not necessarily that I should speak, this will become a self-dabba. But coming to the defense challenges, when the 75 challenges were thrown, I was part of the discussion team, initial discussion team, when they were apprehensive that why this 75, are there any, as one of my dear Dr. Anupam was telling, is it, are we that overthinking? Then I said only one thing, let us say MOTR technologies were discussing, but BUTSOP was there. Then I said if you don't start now, maybe after 10 years we have to repeat ourselves. that we would have started 10 years back, otherwise it's too late. So obviously all the engineers who started startups now, 10 or 15 years back, we were also like that. Started at that time, probably we didn't have support, we sought governmental jobs and started working with the government. These boys and these enthusiastic children have no opportunities, government support is there. Important thing, previous session, Vineet has mentioned, that is the wonderful model when MSMEs and corporates, when they support startups, startups will be thinking about the innovation platform along with academia, and MSMEs and industry will talk about sharing the platforms, investments, initial investments when ROI doesn't work out, taking commercialization and taking a long road path. This combination should flourish. And users, I was there with General Bhadoria in IIT Mumbai a month back, where Kandari Saab was also there. When IIT Mumbai was explaining about quantum communication, sensors, such kind of things, Bhadoria Saab was telling, I was the user, had you given me, I would have taken up. So the important thing is, very, very important thing is, whatever the knowledge in pockets available within India at IITs, IICs, NITs, labs, etc., they are not coming onto the particular one platform to share with. The second thing is, we should have our own systems, because if you buy a small subsystem from abroad, what kind of things, embedded systems are there, we do not know. So we should have our own mechanism right from the scratch, element onwards. Industry is capable, academia is capable, only somebody should be there as a system administrator to connect these dots. I don't think anything is impossible in India, and all our forces, 3 customers, and of course including DSA, 4th customer, they would be damn happy within 4 to 5 months, because challenges are on. I was also constantly pursuing the winners of the challenges. I am telling, don't go in a conventional way. Please think out of the box. If you target yourself to complete within 1 year, please target it for 6 months and demand what you want. We are all with you, especially is ISRO with you. Our chairman is very, very clear, because only thing is, since we are in the civilian front, we cannot come on board right from the beginning and lead. But we are on the foundation, strong foundation. Foundation means hidden, that will not be seen, but it will give maximum support to the superstructure, whatever the superstructure that you raise with the help of iSpa, with some DSA. Definitely DRDO is another giant which has got huge technologies. We are there with you, absolutely no issue at all. And so already we started working for facility sharing. MOU soon it's going to be signed in this platform, maybe a month and time, something like that. And our chairman and our all directors. In fact, on the other day, Mayank told me, we wanted to have 3 days time, please identify. At 10 o'clock, I called my director SAC to identify the people. Next day morning, 7 engineers have been identified. Within 4 days, we reviewed more than 25 proposals and given the evaluation to, let's say, matrix to the evaluation team. So that is the support ISRO will get. Obviously, when ISRO is committed, there is no depth for hand holding, sir. I am assuring you, you will get the right product, you will get whatever the things you face, facilities you mentioned. Advanced technologies like air breathing, quantum communication, sensors, these things have to be pursued, because they are the order of the day. They are the technologies going to play a big role in future to come. We are already in Denver, but we are with you. You please demand and take the services from us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was, nothing less was expected from Bapa and Pitama. To say that you would remain the foundation and you would actually be that thrusters for all the engines or for all the rockets of all the industry. I think one point which you brought, and I think as ISPA we need to really take it as an agenda, Satyam, is sir mentioned about how do we pool and connect the dots. I think I'm going to take that as an assignment. We'll discuss among ISPA and see. He talked about pooling the technologies, knowledge, expertise that lies in various pockets across this country, including ISRO, IITs and all that, and how do we connect and create. I think good assignment, we'll take it up, sir. So moving forward now, I think we did hear from DSA, DSP and ISRO. Let's move towards the industry. And let's look at how the industry is looking at the defense space as an opportunity, and also what challenges do you think would you be facing in addressing these opportunities? And I would like to start off with Mr. Vinod Senton.
Good evening, and thank you, ISPA, for giving me an opportunity. It's a privilege and an honor to be amidst these great people to discuss about what are the opportunities and challenges an industry would see. And I think I can talk about it in two ways. One is the downstream and the upstream. As you are aware, it has been quite popular that so far most of the work has been carried out in upstream. We have seen a lot of success stories from ISRO in various fields: communication, earth observation, meteorology, scientific, all of that. So it has, and subsequently the different launch vehicles. So upstream has been the focus in the last 30 to 40 years, and we have some good credentials as a country. Though downstream brings in a lot of huge proportion of the space economy business. Concluding on the upstream, I think there are a lot of opportunities, disruptive technologies that are being talked about by the young startups to the matured Indian industries who have been nurtured under the guidance of ISRO, starting from a component to a qualification to a process to an operator. Everything has been quite methodically been trained, groomed, so that today's industries are able to stand any kind of an audit from any part of the world and be ready to deliver space hardware. That is been the story of upstream. The only next step that we need to do is to move up the value chain, continuing on the upstream, and increase the density of the space electronics, the performance, the efficiencies, the speed of realization, the ease of the procedural things. All of that are the next level of things that one needs to adapt and constantly work on to improve the upstream capabilities. Use already the heads-up situation that ISRO and DRDO have provided for the Indian industries, and take it from there and then realize system level, satellite level, which is what IDS has been clearly asking for. Everybody ready to deliver satellites with these requirements, please come forward, this is the time. I think that's the next step as far as opportunity, as far as upstream is concerned. But like I said, there has been a lesser focus in the past for a much bigger opportunity called the downstream. And what exactly is downstream? Downstream is nothing but data processing. And we are all aware that the downstream data, as delivered from satellite, may not be ready, in the sense that it's a data that has to be processed initially and made it as analysis-ready data, which is popularly known as ARD. So I think a lot of work has to happen in analysis-ready data processing, the front-end processing right at the ground. This is an opportunity for the downstream players. And similar to upstream, the downstream has also a lot of multidisciplinary activities. You have the data churning, the processing capability, the computing capability, the experiential, artificial intelligence-based ML algorithms to be deployed. All of these have to come together. The only advantage is in the downstream that it has its footprint on a much vaster area in terms of applications, including the defense applications. And the other advantage, unlike the upstream, where you need a lot of clean rooms, expensive components, a lot of qualification, etc., what you need in a downstream is a cool mind, a disruptive idea, a processing computer, and that's it. I think that's an asset-light downstream can bring in much more faster products and services. That is something. Having said that, you need to work with multiple specialities, the data processing, the efficient algorithm developers. So there is a need for the academics to play a role. There is a need for data processing guys to play a role. There is a need for domain specialists to authenticate the data that is processed. all of that is a very need of the hour, which can result in umpteen number of applications. I think that is something which, including things like encryption, security aspects of the data, all of that. So I think one needs to continue to work on the upstream and take the advantage of what has been given in the last 3 to 4 decades, but quickly speed up and then realize systems. Don't stay at subsystems. That is one point. And on the downstream, use all these ingredients, make sure that all the right set of partners are there together to realize meaningful application, which can be asset light. It can be a resource less intensive, less expensive. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thanks, Vinod, for touching upon both the opportunities and challenges upstream as well as downstream. So what I could capture as, while there are opportunities, the capital intensiveness, the risk intensiveness, and the dual nature of the applications are the key challenges in the upstream sector. And the multidisciplinary need, intellect, and of course you also mentioned about innovative ways of finding or imagining what the end user needs, whether it is soldier who is at the front or the command control center which is networking amongst the various actors in the war, and creating solutions for them would be. Thank you very much for that perspective. Moving forward, I would like to request Sunil. He is director at Azista. So Sunil, how do you look at the opportunities and challenges in the midstream of the space sector?
Right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share my thoughts. So, midstream. I mean, if I may, divide my answer into 2 parts. First, if you talk of the SATCOM part, I'd say that it's a very uphill, challenging task at this point, unless there is a constellation up there to serve. Right. So, in terms of SATCOM, the problem is you can't just send 1 or 2 satellites up there and then slowly increase the density of the constellation. It's not useful at all without a minimum number of satellites up there. So that's where the question comes to my mind: who is actually capable of building this high throughput satellites or the payloads and then setting up a constellation? That whoever is going to do that is going to actually end up executing the midstream part as well to enable the utilization of such a constellation. So I see that that there is a fair bit of work. Now coming to the general commercial market, unfortunately till very recently, right, it has not been very easy for Indian companies to actually play a role in ground station equipment as such, even to install hardware or even to design, develop hardware. Right. So while globally, companies have had a very open market, in their own traditional market segments, and they have grown. I mean, they have gone far ahead in terms of technology maturity. So I think it's not a very easy market to crack. And if you see all the startups, right, in the new space segment, you don't see any in the midstream. That's because the money in midstream is in services. Unless there's an upstream company doing some, generating a lot of data, there's nothing for the midstream company to do. In fact, at Azista itself, I've been looking at the possibility of establishing a ground station for our own satellites. But it's very expensive, and it is not financially meaningful, for us to invest in a ground station for our own satellites. I'd rather use a shared network of a KSAT or somebody else, or an SSC, right? So that way, midstream is not a very attractive business segment as of today, but because it has not been explored until now, and also because you don't have a lot of Western players operating ground stations in Russia and China for various reasons, right? Somebody like KSAT does not operate in Russia or China, and a lot of other operators don't have a number of ground stations there. And these are huge land masses, right? And in the Asian region, you have India as a good alternative because places like Mauritius, Singapore and all, they actually have a good number of ground stations compared to India when it comes to the private ground stations. So I think going forward, you will see a number of ground stations coming up, a lot of scope for the service segment to make a lot of money and to serve various constellations, not only Indian but also global. But I don't see any Indian companies as of today doing that because, I mean, yeah, there are already a number of companies that are capable and they're eager to enter the Indian market. Yeah, so that's my take.
Good, Sunil. I see that while you say that the upstream is quite challenging in terms of quite glamorous, you have launch vehicles and thrilling and all that, and the downstream is all about intellect and all that. What you are saying is there is no much mullah in the mid segment.
Not yet.
Not yet, yeah, and therefore that is something which gets kind of ignored in this space segment, and I see that you specifying how important that segment is because it connects the upstream and midstream, and we need to really create that sector, and especially when it comes to the defense space. Obviously we can't use the same ground segments or the ground stations which we have used for the communication, so we need to create specific ones, so therefore it would be a specific market, right? So thanks for that perspective. Few things which I thought could add. We saw that there is opportunity in the upstream, there is opportunity in the downstream, and there is something which is a non-glamorous opportunity in the midstream. And as I'm talking about it, there is another stream which came to my mind. And I'm going to create this fourth one, because we talked that defense from space. Now, we do have assets, very important strategic assets up there in the space. So therefore, securing these defense assets in itself is going to be a challenge and a market opportunity. We can give it upspace, I don't know, upstream. We need to give it a very important role because these are Indian strategic assets in international jurisdiction, like international waters. So I would like to go back to the chair of the session to give his concluding remarks and also address upon how do we look at safeguarding the strategic space assets as well. Thank you, sir.
I think it is a wonderful session, and I think we have crossed the entire spectrum of space, and as your moderator summed up, how to protect our assets in the space. I think when you talk of security, it is both defensive and offensive. Generally, we don't speak of offensive deliberately in the open forum, but it is very important. I'm sure some of these we can discuss separately as to how we need to protect it and why it is very important to protect these assets in the what we call as global commons. Just to add a few things, I think what I take away from this is, of course, mapping the industry, academia, startups, MSMEs, so we know, as you said, connecting the dots, who's doing what. Also have the TRL levels going of these various, I would say, institutions, and how do we collaborate and cooperate and as we move ahead. And as you rightly mentioned, when people are talking of upstream and downstream, I said we are stuck in the midstream. And that, I think the fundamental point one of our colleagues did raise, and that we need to address. The fact we need both agility and the density, which is important. Economy of doing the space business, and we need to create test facilities, which presently I don't know they're adequate or not, because as the industry starts booming, then I think there'll be demand for these test facilities, and we need to address how do we create that. And as we look ahead, I think, as my colleague had mentioned, we are about 80,000 crores to invest in space. That's a large chunk, and we have opportunities, we have funding available. So at the end of it, I would say, as the previous moderator, his name was Kranti. So we need to have revolution in space for ease of doing business. And as my mother used to teach me when I was young, whatever you buy should be sasta, sundar or tikau. That is what I would look ahead for future in space business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for beautifully summing it up.
Mr. Lakshmesh, I may.
Yeah, sir.
To add to sir, you spoke of space situational awareness, right? I mean, how do we protect our assets in space? Of course, I mean, we could improve the cyber security of the space assets that we have up there. We could also improve that by adding redundancy, right? I mean, we operate a nice facility which could produce about 50 satellites a year, and I'll just send more up there if somebody is going to damage the assets. That is one way of, securing our capabilities.
Sure, thanks, Sunil.
To that, probably I think space situational awareness, if you talk, we have to see the existing, what is the capabilities, what we have, and what new capabilities we should get. This is very important aspect. Let us say today we have ground-based systems, multi-object tracking radars, to track maybe up to 50 centimeters or 100 centimeters of debris. But tracking is of no use. See, first is research, assessment and mitigation is very important. Still we depend on, let us say, foreign sources for getting the data, very huge, millions of dollars we have to throw to get the data. And we should have our own algorithms to predict what is the likely collisions and mitigate them. That is another one. Anyhow, every National Space Agency is on the job to protect our own assets. Then the same thing we have been discussing at different fora. National Space Agencies, they should have a convention, UN convention, to bring back their debris. Not to cause, first is protecting ourselves from other debris. And second thing is our own plans to bring down our debris. Let's say several universities, this is where exactly I'm telling universities in a very isolated way, foreign universities, Sweden universities, some of the universities, Switzerland universities, they are working on how actually we can grab that one or fire using the laser mechanisms or maybe some net mechanisms, some robots, bringing them. This is one very good, let us say, market for the people to go, because many startups would have been there here. I am telling, Digantara alone is working at present very closely on space debris management. But this is one area, lot of opportunities are there. Maybe industry consortia or innovative people, if they work out, it works out a very, very beautiful and international market you are going to grab. Because even though small nations, they are putting the satellites by hiring, purchasing from the lead nations, but they don't have mechanism. One is, as Sunil was telling, ground segment. Another one is the space asset management and space debris management. These are all the very potential hidden areas for the people to work on technologies and grab the market. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, in any case, we have extended the time limit. So, and if with the permission of panelists, can we take some questions? Any questions? Couple of questions. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Someone's raised. Okay. मैं पूछा करके कोई तो पूछ लो यार एक question.
I was just wondering, for DSA, is SSA really your biggest priority?
Can you be a little louder? We have some noise.
Am I audible? Yeah. If for DSA is SSA, because we were talking about that, is that the top priority for you? And if so, how do you think you can go about it? Do you require not just private sector participation, but also international cooperation? How do you see that?
See, today DSA may not have priority because it started doing it. Maybe after 4 or 5 years, it will become a top priority. If you don't start doing right now, probably at that time you cannot catch up.
Sir, I have got one question here.
About, see, you asked a valid question about the SSA. Actually, SSA, if you do only for our country, it is not going to be sufficient, because the satellites go all over the world. So it requires a collaboration with the friendly foreign countries. I just want to tell you something breakthrough has happened in the country where we are going to have our own SSA to meet our needs, and industries are going to be involved in a big way. And as you rightly brought out, it is not going to be sufficient to have our own radars and network to have the total situation awareness. It is going to be a collaboration with the other friendly foreign countries. Sir.
I would just like to add, you asked that is it a top priority? I would say it is a priority, but may not be the top, but definitely a priority, as my colleagues have mentioned, and we need to work together in a very collaborative way, and good ideas are always welcome.
Yeah, I think this might be a suggestion from my side. Like, we are an MSME-based business unit based out of Trivandrum, working in closely in interaction with ISRO units in Trivandrum and Bangalore. Now, my question is that what are the measures to decrease the stagnation period for these vendor registrations, getting accreditations for various packages and all? Because for us, it is almost a period of 2 years since we have submitted one package for accreditation, and the lead time or the stagnation period is going to be very huge. So, what are the measures? Like, I understand that the space technology has stabilized within over the lifespan of a few stalwarts like Vikram Sarabhi sir, APJ Abdul Kalam sir. Now we have reached in a very mature stage, looking forward for a very promising future with the private collaborations and the vendors like us. Now, what are the measures taken to, or what will be the measures envisages to bring down the stagnation period? I mean, the stagnation period at the same time was used in the previous discussion also. It takes a lot of stagnation period. So obviously that is something which is agreed upon. Now, what are the measures taken to reduce the stagnation period so that we, the next generation who is looking forward for a promising career, need not spend their entire lifespan of 30 years, 35 years looking for this, and then the benefits will be reaped only by the next generation? Is it? I mean, it should not be the case. So what will be the measures taken to reduce the stagnation period? I mean, it's a collaboration. I mean, all of them people are there, and the defense is there, the space is there. So what do you measures do you suggest, please? Let me know. Thank you.
Okay, if I can, I think what you mean by stagnation, I think, is the overall period of acquisition, usage of any technology, or is it that you have given a solution but you're not getting an order? What is it?
No. It is not myself just giving a solution and getting an order, but the all-round procedure. I mean, for any process, standard operating procedure will be given for any standard
procurement process.
Yes.
Okay. So you heard actually Chair mention in his opening talk about how the policies of the defense procurement policies are going to get tweaked for space. So we just seriously look forward, and that's a good question, sir. In fact, it's a question for all of our mind. But one thing I think as industry, all of us know, space and defense are something where if you need, apart from good capital, you need to have huge patience. So I'm sure you would enter this field with that. Sir, you would like to add to that question?
I'd just like to add to my colleague is that first to like that the future is bright, A. B is that people are working towards what I call ease of doing business. I think a lot of things are changing, and I'm sure we don't have to wait a generation for a change to happen. It'll happen much faster. It'll happen faster than the time it took to change from a dumb phone to a smartphone. Thank you.
As an industry partner for you, I can answer on behalf. I think the tone in the last 30, 40 minutes is that you don't wait for anybody to approve you. You bring a solution, we are ready to take it. That's the kind of a zero lead time that is being talked about. So I think you may not want to take all the previous things as the references, but certain times the procedures are something which are really frustrating and patience testing. But I think if you look at it from the futuristic point of view, bring a system, we are going to take it tomorrow. That's the environment. Look at that positivity and then be ready for that. That's the message. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks to all the panelists. Satyam, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. May I please request Director General Indian Space Association to come and give his vote of thanks. We request our panelists to please remain seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you I'll be very brief. To start from what happened today with the Defense Secretary and Dr. Saraswat and our Chairman ISPA laying down, along with our lead venture capitalist Ravi speaking about in the plenary session, and then in the two sessions we had identified, firstly for nurturing the new space and what do we do in the military complex. I will not go into the details of that, or what are the good lessons we have picked up. I would definitely talk of one, and that is the Zovian add-in model, which is really great. In fact, the first time when I visited them a year back, nearly a year back, I was confused because Zovian had called me at a particular time and add-in also had called me nearly at the same time. And I was told the two facilities are nearby. And when I walked in there, both the owners were there together. I thought maybe I made a mistake or I've called them at one place because I wanted to separately see each of them and their facilities. And there I saw this model, which I hope picks up, where there is one who is providing the facilities, providing the market, and the other is the one who is providing the ideas. And that is how this space ecosystem, I believe, has to grow in India. I'll not go into many other things, but what I would, all the panelists who are here, I would not thank them for what they spoke today, but for what has happened in a very short time in the defense domain. 1 year back, when I met some of the startups and some from the industry itself, they wanted to know from me who was the DSA, who was the DG, and how can they meet him. Whom to meet in the defense to know what does defense want from space. To today, where 75 challenges have been defined and laid down. And I think each and every startup who is worth it, and of course senior industry members, know the DGDSA personally. They know in the defense ministry whom to contact if something has to be done. And my compliment goes to each and every industry member, the response they gave when we had to make these 75 challenges. AVM Rajiv Ranjan, I want to specifically name him, the way actively he participated from the user end, along with the DGDSA, and of course all industry members, 3 of them sitting here, and many of our startups, the way they responded on a day-to-day basis for us to be able to take out these 75 challenges in a very short time. My thanks to all of you. And this is just the beginning. As the last question came and was that how will this stagnation go? It is going. It is moving. Let me assure you, if you participate in the challenges which are there, maybe by the end of this Aero India, some of you would have already been selected, people who have participated in the challenges. It is going forward. And it will continue moving forward. My special thanks is to the chairman ISRO in absentia, and I would take from him what he has been saying now, that today the future of Indian space has to be led not by ISRO, but by the Indian space enterprise, which comprises of ISRO, DRDO, industry, startups, and academia. And I'm very sure this complete space enterprise will take forward the requirements of defense as well as our civilian users. And very rightly, as for all these dual-use technologies, and for them to become commercially relevant, they have to be used not only by the military, but have to have civilian usage. I end here thanking each one of you, all the panelists who are here, and also the members of the previous panels who have added value to our space seminar which has taken place here. To each one of you, my special thanks. And here I would like to mention that we did not let Dr. Sudhir and Dr. Anupam Sharma not sleep for a number of days, and the way they responded, I was told the response is not going to come for a year. They surprised me by giving it in 4 days when these challenges were put in. My compliments to both of you, and this is how differently all our government organizations are now working towards taking space forward. In the end, once again, my thanks to all of you. Thank you, gentlemen.
May I request DG ISPA to felicitate the panel head, our CISC, A. Marshal B.R. Krishna. Thank you very much, sir. You yourself were very powerful in your delivery, sir. Very inspiring for the industry, sir. May I request our panel head to also give mementos to the other panelists. I'll call up your names. May I request you to please come forward and accept the panel head. AVM Rajiv Ranjan. Dr. Sudhir, ISRO. Dr. Anupam, DRDO. Mr. Vinod S. Chipalapati. Mr. Lakshmesh. Mr. Sunil Indurti. May I request all panel members to move ahead for a group photograph. May I also request the entire team of ISPA, which had contributed towards making this event a success in a very, very short span of time. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, we just had 3 to 4 days to put everything across from the time we were given this mission to execute the seminar here. So may I please request all the volunteers and members of Indian Space Association to please move up. Ashish, come. Please call the volunteers who are outside. Renuka, yeah, please call them. Ladies and gentlemen, this young team really deserves a grand applause. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being such an amazing audience. I've never seen the event so nicely packed, especially as being the last event of the day. So thank you, all of you. And please continue to be associated with the Indian Space Association in fulfillment of your aspirations to see India becoming a great space power.